One of the most overlooked areas of women's health is the profound transition to menopause, known as perimenopause. For instance, up until recently, did you have a good idea as to what went down in perimenopause and what the menopausal transition entailed? I would guess not, because nobody was talking about it. Up until the last 10 to 8 years, I feel like it wasn't even recognized as the transition that it is. And finally, we are talking about it. Most of the time, what has happened is that women go to their doctors who are not trained in menopause care or perimenopause care, and they are getting gaslit when they inquire about the myriad of symptoms that they're dealing with in their 40s and the early 50s. It has often been chalked up to merely aging, or my favorite answer that I hear from women all of the time is, well, you're in midlife, so it's just how it is. Even today, we aren't talking enough about the 4 to 10 plus year perimenopausal transition that happens to take place when, let's be honest, we are taking on the most. I don't know about you, but every woman that I know who is in their late 30s to early 50s are doing big things and juggling all the plates for their family and their friends and their careers and then some. This is a whopping transition, and it deserves and begs our attention. And for many of us, it demands our attention. For many women, perimenopause, especially the last 3 to 5 years leading to menopause, when estradiol is erratically fluctuating and declining, and progesterone is practically at postmenopausal levels, these years tend to be the most challenging because symptoms really ratchet it up. We're talking about unexplained weight gain, belly fat, body composition changes, extreme fatigue, endless sleepless nights, hot flashes, night sweats, migraines, anxiety, depression, rage, unexplained mood swings, brain fog, heavy bleeding. Man, it can hit you all at once. I cannot tell you how many women I've met who've had all of those symptoms, or at least 5 of them. This number of disruptive perimenopausal symptoms can feel like you just got hit by a Mack truck with no end in sight, because often these symptoms can last years. And if you want to know the signs and symptoms of perimenopause, I have a great episode, it's a solo episode from a couple of months back, and it was titled How to Know You're in Perimenopause, including the 40 plus symptoms associated with declining hormones. It was episode 572. Now, it can feel beyond discouraging and honestly, darn right frustrating when you feel like you don't have viable solutions to address some of your most disruptive symptoms. When it comes to perimenopausal care, if you're going to go to your typical OBGYN or your typical primary doctor, the standard of care is birth control pills or an IUD, which is still birth control, and a depression or anti-anxiety medication like Zoloft or Paxil, and a sleep medication like Ambien, and possibly, depending on what your labs look like, if you've got, higher than normal or unfavorable lipids and cholesterol labs, you may be recommended a statin. Or if your blood sugar seems to be more in the pre-diabetic range, which is the case for so many women, you may be recommended metformin. But these solutions don't address most of the root cause issues driving the symptoms that I mentioned earlier. They don't address the declining hormones that are driving these symptoms to begin with. Hence, what perimenopause is all about, declining and fluctuating hormones that ultimately end up with hormonal disruption and inflammation. And not to mention the deregulated stress. I cannot tell you how many cortisol labs I've looked at over the years for women in midlife, and I don't know if I've ever seen a normal cortisol profile, like ever, right? It's sometimes super, super high, or when stress has been, playing out for, decades, it's also very, very low. Or I see a ton of gut issues. I see trauma. I see deregulated and, unhappy mitochondria. I see crazy sleep issues. Again, we are not looking at the root cause of what is going on here. We're just kind of throwing band-aids at the problem. And again, it's not necessarily a problem per se. It is a transition. But when we are dealing with symptoms due to a hormone deficit, then, it's something that needs to be tended to. And that's really why I wrote my last book, The EO Menopause Solution, so that there was a book out there that really outlined the biggest root causes. And thankfully, even more books are on the market today. My interview with Dr. Mary Claire Haber just went live a couple weeks ago. I really love her new book, The New Menopause. So again, there's a lot of great resources out there that are speaking to this, but we need to speak louder. Now, the best way to navigate this epic transition from being fertile and having an ovulatory cycle that's pretty consistent every single month to menopause is understanding what is going on and making a plan to pivot. Because whether you know it or not, if you are in this transition, your body is changing. It is never going to be the same, and we have got to change with it. So you want to be able to support your body from the beginning or at any stage of perimenopause that you are in. So now that I've laid that out, you want the good news? There is so much that we can do. And there are so many side benefits to making some pretty simple pivots that I'm going to share with you today, because that's literally what this episode is all about. I want you to know that although your body is indeed changing, there are adjustments that you can make that can significantly ease the transition and have you feeling like yourself as you're entering into this new beginning, as you're entering into what people call the second half of your life, which is menopause. I also want to make sure that you're pivoting because I know that although women live 4 to 6 years longer than men, 25% of our lives on average are spent riddled with a chronic condition that lowers our quality of life. And guess when that happens? It happens in menopause. So the more that we can do to be preventive in this transitional period, like this is the window. If there was a window, this is the window. And if you are already past the window, no worries. There's always something that we can do. Your body is always adapting. It's always creating homeostatic changes. There's always something that we can do. But I will tell you that this period of time, this 10 years or so, this is where the vast remodeling happens and when we have the greatest ability to make change. So a couple things that I want to note that are very important about successfully navigating this beautiful transition. First, you got to want to embrace the physical and emotional changes and be open to making adjustments to your body and your health because you deserve it. Second, you got to decide that you are worthy of focusing on, because implementing these changes to support your body is going to take some time and some dedication where you are prioritizing you. But I promise that the payoff is worth it, not only for these transitional years, but the many years to come into postmenopause, where so much of the magic happens for many of us. So as long as you're feeling fully committed to you and optimizing your health with a few strategic changes, I know that you're going to feel great throughout your 40s and 50s and even beyond. Because I don't know about you, but I showed up to age powerfully. I showed up to be resilient. I showed up to feel powerful moving into the second half of my life because I am in it with you. I am turning 45 this year. I am knee deep in perimenopause, and it is a mind-blowing experience. But I am making pivots as I go. And what I've noticed is that my body is changing, I would say, almost every single year. So there's a lot of surprises that I believe we get to look forward to in this transition, but I am all for it because the only way is through. So now that you and we've committed together, let's dive into some non-negotiable pivots so that you and I both sail through this transition with as much ease and grace. And, we don't kill everybody in the process. But before I recommend the pivots that will make the biggest impact, I always want you to feel like you know what's going on with your body and have a deeper understanding of your metabolic health. The biggest lever to feeling more energized and having a brain that works for you, because I don't know about you, but so many women come to me with mental fatigue, memory issues, alertness issues, and a difficult time concentrating. And because of that, millions of women leave the workforce during the menopause transition because they're not able to operate mentally the way that they want. I've even struggled greatly with brain fog, and my brain injury last year did me no favors. So I want to invite you to grab my metabolic assessment guide that includes questions and labs so that you can determine your level of metabolic health during this transition. Because let me tell you, our metabolic health can get super rocky during this time. That's when I start to see numbers going into unfavorable ranges. I look at labs every single day from women that I'm working with or women that are colleagues and friends. And man, the shift is profound once we enter midlife. So if you're between 40 and 55, this is a super easy 2-minute metabolic assessment that will give you a lot of insight, including functional labs. So I will link in the show notes for this episode, and you can go to drmariza.com/metabolic assessment. I know that's a wordful, so just go to the show notes and it'll be there. So now that you've got that, let's get into my favorite pivots that will really move the needle, things that I am doing every single day because they have become a way of life to address your metabolic health and to even drop that stubborn belly fat. Because again, body composition changes are real in perimenopause. The first thing I always tell women is to know your numbers. I'm talking about your lab numbers. It's so important to have a baseline no matter where you are in your health journey, but especially in perimenopause, because as I mentioned, perimenopause is a time that your body is pivoting and your hormones are pivoting and declining, and also other lab biomarkers are changing as a result. We become more insulin resistant during this time due to declining estradiol levels. So ideally, I recommend having a baseline of labs that you have from your early 30s so that you can compare as you go into perimenopause and menopause. But if you don't have labs from your 30s or early 40s, I recommend starting to get labs, a timeline of labs starting now. Right now is the new later. And the more insight we can look into, years of labs, we can begin to see trends that are specifically identifiable to you. So here are a list of labs I recommend that every woman run at least once a year to get a picture of your overall health. So a full lipid panel that includes total cholesterol, VLDL, LDL, ApoB, and triglycerides. A CBC with differential, so a complete blood panel with differential. A metabolic panel, a human growth factor lab, because you want to see what's going on there in terms of your metabolic health. Fasting insulin, super important precursor for, again, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Fasting glucose, hemoglobin A1C, uric acid, vitamin D3. So often I see I would say 95% of the time, women over the age of 45 have lower levels of vitamin D, like very low. So always look at that number. And I also just recommend supplementing with 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 every single day with K1 and K2. So I would just say, just do that. B12, ferritin. So I'd love to see an iron panel. So ferritin, serum iron, transferritin, total iron binding capacity. So it's just looking across the board. You're looking at your hematocrit and your hemoglobin as well. All of that's going to be done in the CBC. A thyroid panel, because goodness, I cannot tell you how many women have an elevated TSH, low T4, free T4, a low free T3. And then I start to also see TPO antibodies showing up. So I recommend a TSH, T4, free T3, and a TPO. Next, I would also love to determine your cardiovascular health, right? Obviously, you're getting your blood pressure. So yes to that. Homocysteine, fibrinogen, and SED rate. So those are the other three that I would be looking at to kind of just figure out what kind of inflammation is going on within the endothelial of the vascular wall. Because again, there's a new research article that just came back where they looked at women who had clean arteries before perimenopause or just at the start of perimenopause. And at the end, once they were finally in menopause, there were definitely plaque buildup, more rigid vascular walls, and higher blood pressure. So we know that perimenopause is an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So again, the pivots that we make in this very critical transitional time are imperative to our cardiovascular health, because just note that more women die of heart disease than anything else. More women die of heart disease than all combined cancer. So when you think about breast cancer, it's 1 in 8 women. When we think about heart disease and stroke, it's 56%. So it's more than 1 in 2. Now, to dig into sex hormones, I know some doctors are going to tell you there's no reason to test sex hormones because in perimenopause, they're all over the place. It is like testing a moving target. But I do believe, especially in early peri relative to late peri, again, this is your early peris, in the first couple of years. Late peri is like towards the end of the 10 years. A lot can happen in that time. So I am still a proponent of test, don't guess. I believe that testing and symptoms are both big determining factors. I think it's a yes and. Some doctors are going to give you medications and hormones only based on your symptoms. I believe that it needs to be both. So I do recommend, obviously, serum labs are fine, so blood labs to test, but you have to make sure that you're testing on the right day. That's why I also recommend a Dutch complete test, because this test looks at sex hormones and their metabolites, the overall diurnal panel of free cortisol, which is what I look at all the time over 24 hours, insights into nutritional deficiencies, oxidative stress, gut dysbiosis, melatonin, vitamin D, neuroinflammation, and so much more. So the problem with the Dutch test is it's expensive. It's between $400 and $500. So again, can you make changes without the Dutch test? Can you know you're in perimenopause without looking at a follicular stimulating hormone test, or a luteinizing hormone test, or estradiol and progesterone? Yes, you can. Just like puberty, we're not testing girls to know that they're in puberty. We don't necessarily need to test you that once you're in perimenopause, especially if the symptoms are there. But if you're thinking about hormone replacement therapy as a way of supplementing, that is worthwhile, so that it can be dosed accordingly to really support you and your symptoms. Now, more comprehensive functional testing like gut testing and hair tissue mineral analysis, those are obviously available as well. I'm a big fan of running a GI map test. I believe that, and hormones, if you bring hormones on, they're amazing optimizers, but they only work as well as your gut microbiome. So I feel like we've got to optimize that microbiome when we're bringing on hormones. Also, we got to optimize the liver, because the liver is obviously metabolizing those hormones. So those are two areas that I deeply dig into when I'm working with a personal client or patient, because I want to make sure that if we're going to bring in hormones, that we've got the detoxification pathways open and working properly. So I get that more comprehensive labs are hard to get and they can be too much money. So again, get what you can. Focus on the labs that you can get from your general practitioner or your OBGYN, and, based and work from those. You can still make huge pivots and changes with that information without all the labs, without all of all of that information. I spent almost $3,000 on labs last year for a number of reasons, and it's expensive. I've spent hundreds of dollars on labs this year. Again, would I have still made some of those changes without those labs? Probably. Did they, help to help me pivot a bit? Absolutely. But again, it's a lot of money. So I totally recognize if you want to just start implementing changes without having to spend all of that kind of money. Now, if you're looking for a comprehensive lab testing guide, I do have one in the show notes. And it's just great to have as a reference guide, because I work off of functional lab numbers, not off the standard labs that I find are mostly built from men. Okay, number 2. Another great way to track what's going on with you. Honestly, this is like the ultimate biohack for women. It's something we've been doing forever, but track your menstrual cycle. The whole part about perimenopause is deregulated hypothalamic ovarian function. So that connection between the brain and the ovaries is going to get real wonky. That's why FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone are going to surge at times, because they're really trying to prompt those ovaries to crank that estradiol and crank that progesterone. So important to be tracking your menstrual cycle. There's key pieces that you're going to start to notice, particularly in the luteal phase of your cycle, especially as you enter into your early to mid 40s. The length of your cycle is going to decrease. You may notice that you don't ovulate on every single cycle. Those are called anovulatory cycles. And in those particular cycles, we don't end up making progesterone. And so you may notice that your PMS symptoms are more intense, that your mood changes are more intense, because that beautiful, soothing, relaxing hormone in the second half of your cycle simply isn't there. You'll also notice that your cycle will begin to shorten. Often it's in the luteal phase that you will notice, instead of the luteal phase being 14 days or 13 days, it's 12 or 11 days. So the other thing that I've noticed, especially as my estradiol has begun to shift and change a little bit, that we have a big estradiol surge about 2 days prior to ovulation, where a lot of us feel super great. I always joke that everyone wants day 13, the day 13 version of us, of our menstrual cycle, because we are the most loving and outgoing and vivacious. Like, that stage follicular phase is pretty sexy on women. But if you don't get that estradiol surge, that feeling you get, the way that you're operating, it falls flat. So I've been noticing that, like on day 12, where I'm expecting to feel my best, I'm not always feeling my best. And so that's just something to be paying attention to. I also recommend tracking your symptoms in relation to your menstrual cycle, or at the very least, track your symptoms. Again, in that episode that I shared with you earlier, which was, I want to say, it's pretty far up there, 572, I think it was. Yeah, 572. That's where I talk about all the symptoms that kind of give you a sense of, you can identify, are these the types of symptoms that are happening to me? So again, the more information that you can learn can really help support not only kind of that menstrual cycle for as long as you have it, but also it can support your reproductive longevity and your overall longevity. And we want to extend that for as long as possible. But the only way that we can really adopt those changes is knowing where you are at in your cycle, right? There's particular nutrients that you can be taking, self-care that you can be implementing, and, nutrients that can really support your body. And so when you're dialed in with what's going on with your menstrual cycle, even though it's going to get a little bit wonky, especially towards the late perimenopausal stage, that's kind of what identifies late perimenopause, where you've skipped a period for more than 60 days. You're able to implement some changes and recommendations that can help just ease that process. Now, if you're looking for ways to optimize the 4 phases of your cycle, go and check out episode 350, Why Women Aren't Small Men, and how to navigate poor health advice when you have a period. Because let's be honest, there's so much awful health advice when it comes to navigating our menstrual cycle. So that's a really powerful episode to give you some really actionable steps to take around optimizing your menstrual cycle. All right, number 3, optimize blood glucose and insulin sensitivity. I love to talk about this. So the newest research is clear for women in midlife. As we move closer to menopause, we become more insulin resistant due to declining hormones, mainly estradiol. Obviously, I have a lot of episodes on this topic, so I want to quickly share my favorite blood sugar hacks with you, because sometimes we just need a little reminder. Number 1, having metabolically boosting morning routine that's protein and fiber focused. So again, big glass of water with electrolytes, maybe a matcha latte or a coffee without sugar, and then a protein focused meal, like just an amazing protein focused, fiber focused, a little bit of healthy fats, so that you are feeling amazing, but also you are in a thermogenic state during breakfast. And so take advantage of building that muscle protein synthesis. I'm going to be talking about that in just a second, and making sure that you feel like you have energy to get through your day. So please have breakfast, make it protein focused, so that you are not only protecting your lean muscle, but you're helping to build it too. Number 2, walk 15 minutes after meals. Best longevity hack ever. But it doesn't have to just be walking. It could be doing squats in your living room. It can be jumping jacks. It can be mountain climbers. It can be walking your stairs for 5 minutes if you've got stairs in your house. It can be cleaning the kitchen, folding laundry, standing up. Just move your body for, even 5 minutes after a meal will change and shift your blood sugar to a more optimal range. Remember, in the evening, we are naturally more insulin resistant. I have looked at so many CGM graphs over the years, probably hundreds. And I will tell you, where I will see the biggest spikes is going to be at dinner time. And it can be really hard to get that blood sugar back down to normal range before bed. And it can mess with your sleep. And if you eat, I'm going to be sharing this as well, a carb heavy dinner. And again, I love carbs, I love fiber, but if it's a big old bowl of pasta, you may find yourself having cravings later on in the evening. So I've got some tips around that. Next is adopt early time restricted eating. So that means eating earlier in the evening, and then do not eat again until you break your fast the next morning after about a 12 to 13 hour fast. It's like a 12 to 13 hour circadian fast. So that means that you're not eating during dark hours. I know that that's not a perfect science, because, depending on the time of the year, some times of the year, like around the holidays, the sun's going down before 5 o'clock, and then the summer it's going down at 8. And so do your best to kind of figure out what works best for you. Our goal is to always eat by 6:30 or 6:30 at the latest. And then I don't eat again until 8 o'clock the next day. Now, again, before you kick off that early time restricted eating in the evening after dinner, so right, you finish dinner and then you're done until the morning, make sure that your last meal of the day is high in protein, low in sugar, or low in refined carbs. So that's the kind of carbs I'm talking about, is refined carbs. That way you don't activate your killer craving centers in your brain. This is especially true in the evening, because how often have you wanted to start your fasting window in the evening, but then you ate a pretty refined carb heavy dinner and found yourself hangry late at night before going to bed, right? And then you're eating some chips or something like at 9 o'clock at night while you're watching your favorite Netflix show or Hulu show. So if your meal has adequate amounts of protein, it's going to fill you up longer, and it's going to set you up for success for that 12 plus hour circadian fast at night. And it is so important, I can't emphasize this enough, to get sufficient protein. I'm talking about approximately 1 gram of protein to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So for example, if a woman weighs 140 pounds and has a lean body mass, kind of like where she's trying to get is like to 120. So that's her kind of optimal lean body mass range. I recommend 105 grams to 120 grams of protein a day, even up to 130 grams of protein. So again, finding that sweet spot for you and really stacking it, kind of bookending it at breakfast and dinner and making up the rest throughout the day. Now, when you break your fast with that first meal of the day, ideally in the morning before you go to work or before you work out, because again, in the morning, you are in a more thermogenic state, you're in a catabolic state. It is prime time to give your body, again, the most nutrient dense foods, including protein. So break that fast in the morning with a savory meal with adequate protein, so 30 plus grams, healthy fats, and fiber. Don't have a sugary focused meal or refined carbohydrates breakfast, because that first meal of the day is going to set the tone for your metabolism and your blood sugar for the next, 36 hours. That's how long it takes to recover your fasting blood sugar from a breakfast. So I don't want you to find yourself on the blood sugar roller coaster because your first meal was cereal or toast and jam or some orange juice or a vanilla latte, right? Because that will just send you on that roller coaster of no return for at least 36 to 48 hours. I've seen it over and over and over again on CGMs. When you kickstart your breakfast with sugar and refined carbs, your body, it takes it so long to rebound from that. So my other blood sugar hacks that I love is take 500 milligrams of berberine, 500 to 600 milligrams of magnesium glycinate, and 2 grams of minoxidil to support blood glucose levels. So I recommend the berberine and the minoxidil in the morning. And you can even take more berberine than that. You can take 500 milligrams for breakfast, 500 milligrams for dinner. And then I recommend the 500 to 600 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bed. Eat dessert after a metabolically healthy meal that's stacked with protein and fiber. Try not to ever eat it for a snack or for breakfast unless you're being super intentional. I mean, obviously we deserve to have that ice cream every now and again, or to have that delicious brownie from your favorite bakery. But just be mindful, be intentional when you're doing it. It's the mindless snacking and desserts. Just also note that if it is a frappuccino at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and there's nothing to blunt that blood sugar response, that you are going to spike to diabetic range. It's going to happen. Can your body recover from that? Sure. It may take 12 to 24 hours, but it can. Just note that it's best to have dessert after that meal to blunt that blood sugar response. And then I recommend stacking blood sugar hacks. So have the amazing metabolically healthy meal. Lunch is really the best time for this. Have the dessert and then go and take a 15-minute walk or do some movement. Also, the other thing that you can do if you know that you're going to have that super sexy dessert, you can do a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar before a refined carb or heavy sugary dessert, and that will curb that blood sugar response. But probably the most profound thing that you can do after dessert, so I always tell people, if you're going to have ice cream, just walk. Like start walking with the ice cream or walk with the frappuccino or walk with the milkshake, whatever it is. Because walking literally after you drink that milkshake or whatever that is, that is going to help to profoundly lower that blood glucose response by up to sometimes 40 points, which is huge. And then last, probably one of the most profound recommendations that I can offer you is to move your body throughout the day, and not just a couple of times. I'm talking about make a point to implement what I call exercise or walking snacks 3 to 5 times a day. So 10-minute spurts of walking, 10-minute spurts of mountain climbers, jumping jacks, let's see what else I love, jump squats, like just do these little bursts. And not only is it going to help to regulate cortisol and your circadian rhythm, it's going to help to stabilize blood sugar, and ultimately it's going to keep you active and boost your longevity. So your mitochondria so love it when you do this. I build in 3 to 5 types of exercise snacks throughout my day. We all have 10-minute windows. We all have 5-minute windows. Like, it's amazing how many push-ups you can get done in 1 minute, or how many squats you can get done in 30 seconds. Like, it doesn't take a lot. Most of my exercise snacks are walking, 10-minute walks, 5-minute walks, but I will bust out some jump squats, jack squats, mountain climbers, push-ups, tricep dips, at least 2 times a day. All right. Now, if you're wondering what the benefits are to optimizing your blood sugar in midlife, it's going to be one, controlling blood sugar and insulin, which is ultimately what we're trying to control. Enhancing metabolic flexibility so that you do have room to eat carbs every now and again and not completely just wreck your metabolism for the day. Fight inflammation, enhance heart health, weight loss and management, prevention of chronic conditions, and enhance sustainable energy, which honestly, the last one, sign me up for enhanced sustainable energy. I will say, when I move the most and I keep my blood sugar super stable throughout the day with what I'm eating and what I'm doing, I just feel so much better. I feel more energized. My brain works better. It's a non-negotiable for me. Number 4, lift heavy weights. So I know the myth is being dispelled that lifting heavy weights is going to bulk us up. Like, no, never. It's just not true. But what is true, that lifting heavy, and I'm talking about a weight where you are at a 6 to 8 rep max, not a 10 to 12 rep max. Lifting heavy is key to maintaining and building lean muscle, boosting metabolic flexibility, increasing strength and power, and honestly, extending your longevity. It is the magic pill. It's the magic elixir. Whether we like it or not, we lose 20% of our strength. Yeah, I'm talking not muscle, but strength by the time we are in menopause. And unless we work to maintain that strength, unless we are holding heavy weights, we will continue to lose it. Not only do we need muscle for energy, strength, and endurance, it's imperative for stable blood sugar, heart health, and metabolic health. And I don't know about you, but I want to be able to pick up my son off the floor even 4 years from now. I want to be able to get off the floor in 20 years from now. I want to be able to always get myself off of the toilet seat. I want to be able to run if I need to for an emergency. And I want to be able to throw, not put, but throw my luggage in the overhead compartment, and also yank that sucker down when I need it, despite all the people that are offering, because obviously I am very short, but I yank that sucker and control it all the way down. So that is something that I'm going to keep on working on. One of the things I've been doing is I've been walking with a weighted vest to help to, again, boost my metabolic health and to support my bones and muscle. So something to consider to add into your regimen of walking is walking with a weighted vest. Also, my commitment, now that I'm able to pick up heavier weights since January, is to lift heavier weights again. And I know that building strength takes time, but it is worth it. And so far, it's paying off. So I'm really grateful for the progress I've made since the beginning of this year. Number 5, eat between 30 and 40 grams of quality protein at each meal, especially breakfast, to kickstart that muscle protein synthesis. This pivot alone allows us to preserve our muscle mass, and we need more essential amino acids to support our hormone shifts. And we need them for our metabolic hormones as well. And honestly, to feel energized, to feel strong. So protein-rich foods such as meat, fish, eggs, legumes, nuts, and seeds can obviously help increase your metabolism for a few hours. And this is because they require your body to use more energy to digest them. This is known as the thermic effect of food. The thermic effect of food refers to the number of calories your body needs to digest, absorb, and process the nutrients in your meals. So research shows that protein-rich foods increase thermic effect the most. For example, they increase your metabolic rate by 15 to 30% compared with 5 to 10% for carbs and 0 to 3% for fats. It's important to note that most women aren't getting enough protein, especially when we enter our 40s and beyond, and that a low protein diet leads to a decline in muscle mass and optimal metabolic health and cardiovascular health. So, plus, adequate protein helps us to feel fuller so that we are not craving something a couple of hours later, which is often carb driven, refined carb driven. So again, I can't emphasize how critical this is. Most women are only getting an average of 60 grams of protein a day. We need at least 85 to 90 grams. Most of us more. So I know that it is hard to do. I know it seems challenging, but just prioritize protein on your plate first. And if you really need to understand, like start to measure and get a sense of what you're working with. Number 6. I know I already talked about this, but it is worth repeating. Walking 7 to, honestly, I'm going to say 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day, and again, ideally 15 to 20 minutes after your biggest meals is the name of the game. Movement is life. And movement is, again, the magic elixir here. I know it's probably not what you're wanting to hear, but here I'm just talking about walking. I'm not talking about strength training right at the moment. And honestly, the best time of the day to walk is anytime. Morning to boost your circadian rhythm, after meals to maintain stable blood sugar, and in the evening for relaxation and increased metabolic flexibility. So get a tracker or a Fitbit or an Apple Watch for accountability. I love my Fitbit Inspire because it's cheap and it gets the job done and it's small. I also love my Whoop strap because it's tracking my heart rate variability, my body score, my stress response system. The Whoop strap is super cool in terms of recovery data. But again, the Fitbit Aspire handles it. Also, the Whoop does track your sleep, which is really nice. And let me tell you, I hit my 10,000 steps every single day, come rain or shine. I don't care if it's 9 o'clock at night and I still have 1,500 steps to go. I am going to make it happen. Okay. And then I'm going to get my butt to bed and fiercely protect my sleep routine like it is $1 million meeting. Number 7, take your supplements. These are my non-negotiables to support your body. And I talked about some of these already. Magnesium glycinate, B vitamins, omegas, vitamin D, adaptogens, digestive enzymes, probiotics, and a great liver detoxification / antioxidant supplement. You know we're dealing with toxins, so make sure that you've got yourself covered. So gut health, liver health, and then again, really meeting the needs of your cellular energy. Other ones that I love, again, is myoinositol. Berberine is a great one. I do love glutathione as well. I love CoQ10 for heart and brain health. So those are some other ones that I definitely recommend. And I carry a couple of these supplements with the highest quality of standards. So if you are not wanting to play when it comes to quality, then definitely check out my supplements. They're made for women by a woman, by me. And you can go to the Essentially Whole store to fill in the gaps in case you're looking for a really high quality supplement line. Number 8, almost last but not least, we're so close. Find a perimenopause and menopause expert and start the conversation about hormone replacement therapy. Each person is individual. I know that you are unique, and all of us deserve a tailored solution, which may include hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, if you're a candidate, which the majority of us are. And there are a lot of bioidentical hormones that are FDA approved and inexpensive, including vaginal estradiol for genital urinary support, which, by the way, genital urinary atrophy, vaginal atrophy is going to happen to pretty much 100% of us. So I want you to know that vaginal estrogen is completely and entirely safe to use. You do not deserve vaginal dryness, UTIs, painful intercourse, incontinence, urge incontinence, none of that. You deserve to be supported. Vaginal estradiol, I also want you to know that you can be on both vaginal estradiol and systemic transdermal estradiol at the same time. There's so much misleading information about hormone replacement therapy, and you deserve real answers. There are great transdermal estradiol options like sprays, gels, and patches. I'm about to get started on a spray estradiol. And I am currently on an oral micronized progesterone known as Prometrium. I get it for $9 a month. And it has been a blessing during the second half of my cycle, that luteal phase where everything hits the fan. And it has helped with my mood swings, my anxiousness, my sleep, and most importantly, my stress resilience. I swear to goodness, I feel like my stress resilience goes down the toilet in my late luteal phase, that last 7 days prior to my period. Now, I typically take 100 milligrams during the first week of my luteal phase. And then, girl, I ramp it up into 200 milligrams. So 2 capsules in the second week of my luteal phase, that late luteal phase, to address the maddening perimenopausal PMS symptoms like rage. So again, you're going to find dosing between, you get 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams, figure out what works well for you there. And I'm looking into a transdermal estradiol, as I mentioned, for my migraines, my brain fog, and other perimenopausal symptoms that are beginning to disrupt my life. This is what I believe. We do not deserve to have disruptive symptoms and to be suffering because our hormones are shifting and declining. I am not going to suffer needlessly. I already feel like I've been suffering enough. And enough is enough. And so right now, I want you to know that I'm building out a masterclass on everything you need to know about HRT. And I'm also creating a comprehensive perimenopausal course. It is clear that we deserve to understand what's happening with our bodies during this powerful transition that changes everything in our body. And we equally deserve the best of everything, including every tool in the toolbox. And yes, I'm talking about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And this leads me to number 9. Know that you are powerful, relevant, strong, and you are a rock star at any age. This is the time to step into who you are, step into who you are going to become. Almost 50% of our life is spent in perimenopause and beyond. So who do you want to become? And what are you going to accomplish that you haven't accomplished yet? Because probably the best of your life is yet to come. You are going to continue to learn and thrive and connect and create. There is no stopping you. So own your power and support your body in becoming your best self. So now that you have my favorite game-changing pivots, and obviously there are more, but I didn't want to make this super crazy long, I want you to know that it's not just about navigating perimenopause and your 40s. It's about living your best life all the time and feeling great in your body and doing the things that you love and feeling joyful and being with the people that you love. Like when I really think about what matters, that's what matters. But man, when we don't feel good, it is so hard to focus on that. And again, you deserve to feel healthy and energized and feel like your brain is firing on all cylinders. I absolutely know that when we take control of our health and our healing journey and we pull the right levers, not the hardest levers, but the right ones that I literally mentioned earlier, and we focus on our health as a priority, healing miracles happen. I see it all of the time. I see it every day. I know because I have been there more than once myself, and I know it's 100% possible to feel amazing and have enough energy to show up in the morning for everyone and throughout the day, and to feel like you've got capacity to live your mission without compromise. So with all that said and done, again, I know how important it is to really identify if your hormones are declining or you've got crazy symptoms related to perimenopause. So again, check out episode 572. And I recommend going and checking out the metabolic assessment guide because it gives you a lot of insight to what is going on with your cellular energy, which is literally the epicenter of everything. Now, if you loved these tips today, please subscribe to the show for more tips like this and rate the show. That way, more women who are looking for this kind of information have a place to land. Until the next episode, have